Hey, welcome back everybody. Thank you for joining me. I'm Larry at Larry's Fountain Pen. Today I'm going to do a little bit of talking, but mostly showing you how some different inks look on Rhodia lined paper with some different nibs. So this is how I determine the inks I like and I don't like as much, or I don't want to use anymore. So I always try to remember to put them in my Rhodia, or for this instance, lined paper, if I don't have the dot, but that's all right. So here's the Carrots Custom, the olive green, really nice color. I like it a whole lot. With a titanium fine nib, and I really enjoy this nib. Super nib, nice and wet and juicy. It's a Monteverde olivine, however you pronounce it. Then I used a Monteverde Ruby right here with my Levenger. Has a medium steel nib. I like the color. Pilot Plumex with the Noodler State Blue. Medium nib, like that one as well. Here's a new color in my life that I really enjoy. It's the Diamine Golden Sands. I don't know if you can see it on your end, but on my end it just comes out so nice. The sparkles and that golden sand is just all over the place, and it's a nice and wet little nib there on the Goulet Steel Broad nib. Then the next ink I use with the Lamy Dialogue 3 is a 14K fine gold nib, and as you all know, I'm not a big fine nib person, but if they're a nice juicy wet nib, then I like it, and Lamy does deliver a nice juicy wet fine nib. So here is the Lamy ink that I used on this pen, and believe it or not, I forgot to write down what ink it was, but anyway, there it is. And do I like this color anyway? I'm not sure yet. That's something I've been thinking about. Go down to the next one. Used a Goulet fine nib, and I used some Robert Oyster ink, and look at this really nice color. Fire and Ice, that come out really nice after it dries, and you know, this is back in May. But just look how pretty the ink goes on paper. And then I used a Anderson medium nib with the Noodler's Blue Nose Bear. Not my favorite ink, but then it's an okay ink. And then the next one was the Robert Oyster Hippo Purple that came out really nice, and I used the Anderson Broad nib, nice and wet Anderson nib as well, and it just came out nice on this Rhodia paper. Time to change up the colors a little bit. I'm using a Goulet 1.5 nib, a nice wet nib. And I'm using the Diamine Magical Forest. And on my end, I can see these sparkles all glittered through each word. It's just really beautiful how it lays down with a nice, juicy, wet nib. And then I used this is the Fountain Pen Revolution blue ink that I used, and I used this and the Fountain Pen Revolution, one of their pens, and I do like the ink, and they have a nice, it was a medium nib, and it's a nice wet nib that the Fountain Pen Revolution puts out. And then on the Noodler's Ahab, I used the Anderson 1.5. and I use the same ink, the Fountain Pen Revolution Blue. Really, you just laid it down nice, and well, there it is. It just came out really nice. Then I used a 1.9 Knox nib, and here is this brown. And here I go. I did not write that down, and I'm trying to think what it was. And offhand, I don't know. But anyway, I have it up there, and I'm sure I'll find it after a while. And then here's one of my favorite yellows. It's a Blackstone Golden Wattle. It's a yellow. A nice, dark, rich, bold yellow that you can read easily. And I'm using the Goulet 1.5 nib. And then I'm using a Knox medium fine in that kind of range nib with the Monteverde Valentine red ink. It's okay. But with a different nib size, I'd get really a different kind of look, a better, deeper look, but this is fine. Okay. Let me go on to the next page. I use on the TWSBI Echo with the broad nib, I use the Magical Forest shimmering ink, really nice. And then here's the Lamy Turquoise I use with a number 6 Jinhao nib. That's a regular Jinhao nib. And that's how it laid it down. And with my Cross fountain pen medium nib, I use the Fountain Pen Revolution Blue. And with the Schneider broad nib, I use the Cross Black. And then again with the Schneider Extra Fine, I use the Waterman Audacious Red. Came out nice. And then here's another of my favorite inks. J. Herbin 1607 Emerald of Chauvet. Or is that pronounced as Chauvet? Either way, it's a sweet, nice, great looking, definitely gets my attention ink. And I'm using the Anderson 1.5 nib, and yes, it's a sweet nib with a sweet ink. Love this ink. I really, really do. And then on the Levenger fountain pen with the medium nib, I use the Parker Emerald. Has a nice flow. And then I come down here on the Bauer 79. I use the Noodlers. And is that Kua Bear Royale?
Yes.
I'm sure I'm right, because I'm bad on pronunciation. Alright, then next is the Diamond Magical Forest again. And I'm using the Knox nib on this one. And it's a medium nib. Next is the Goulet 1.5, the Noodler Bay State Blue. That rocks. I love that blue. And the last but not least, I'm using the I'm using the Anderson 1.5 nib on the Diamine Brandy Dazzle. B-R-A-N-D-Y, Brandy Dazzle. Nice looking ink. It has nice sparkles all through the ink, and with that 1.5, the Anderson nib, it just really comes out really just a great look on paper. And last page, and then I won't keep you. I'm using the Diamine Red Luster with a Anderson broad nib. Nice looking ink with a nice nib as well. And on my end, it just stands out real nice. The Vanishing Point with 18K broad nib, I'm using the Monteverde Mandarin Orange. And it looks more reddish orange than orange, but it's okay. And then the Vanishing Point I'm using, another 18K broad nib, the Diamine Blue Velvet, nice ink, I like that one. On the El Salvador $1 Million pen with a fine nib, I used the Monteverde Ruby ink. Nice nib, nice ink. On the next El Salvador matte black with a fine nib, I used a Mont Blanc permanent black. I'm sorry, let me correct that. Mont Blanc permanent black. Mont Blanc permanent black. Said it twice. And one of my viewers, thank you for helping me with this word. He broke it down for me, because once I said it, Mont Blanc, I have horrible, pathetically horrible pronunciations on these inks. So thank you for not being so critical about that. Little help from my friends. And last one but not least is the El Salvador Gunpowder Black and Rose metal pen. And it has a medium nib with a Diamine 1864 Blue Black. I've already done reviews on these three pens. I've done it on Tuesday, June the 13th. So if you want to look up the reviews on that pen, that's what the date I did it. Well, that's going to wrap up a bit on these inks and what they look like on paper after you put it down and just let it sit for days and weeks, and it comes out really nice. And this is how I go back and I look at inks and I evaluate an ink, and do I want to buy a bottle of that ink or not, or do I want to try the sample again? And it just depends how much I really like an ink to buy a bottle. Sometimes I do make mistakes and I buy a bottle and I find out down the road that I don't really care for it like I thought I did. So there it sits on the shelf, but that's okay. I mean, at least it's there, so if I ever change my mind, it's always available on my shelf there. Well, this is one way how I do it, and I also, believe it or not, I keep my log on pens. Also, I've started this back in May. I use my Uber notebook, my journal with the blank pages, and I've made it into my ink book. So I know what pen I use, when I use it, the nib size, the ink, when I cleaned it out, the wetness, and I'll put comments. So that's how I do mine. Okay? And I'm glad I do this, because this really has helped me a lot on the inks and nibs, and what does that ink look like? What is that? How does that nib write? So that helps me. Well, I guess that's going to wrap this episode up, and I hope you found these inks interesting, because I've had some viewers ask me, say, Larry, what does that ink look like after you let it sit there for a day or a week or even a month? Well, I said, you know what, why not just show them my sheets of ink logs. And that should tell the whole story. All right, leave your comments below. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for having me in your home today. And be safe and don't text and drive. Peace, people. Later.